Hey gang, I'm Joe Edelman and welcome to the Last Frame Live, the longest running weekly photography live stream on YouTube. If you're watching live, please, you know the drill. Leave me a note in the chat, let me know you're here, and let me know where you are in the world. And if you happen to be watching the replay, no worries, you're still an important part of this community. Please leave a comment below the video. Let me know that you made it and were able to watch the show. Already, who do we got here? We got Joe here from up in Michigan, Michael in Texas, Lynn in New York, Ryan's here from Niagara, Canada, Joe Doozle in Cloudy Vista, California. You think you're going to get any sympathy because you're having like a cloudy day in California? Come on now. Any Camera Works from Alaska, but currently in Houston. Nick in Maryland. April in Missouri. Haven't seen you in a while. April, hope all is well. Jim down in Maryland. Let's see. God, Dak the Quack in Canada. Ron is here all the way from Thursday in Australia. And I saw Marcia sneak in here from Western Oregon. Awesome. All of you. Thank you. It's great to have you. We're going to do things a little bit different this week. I do not have a lot prepared tonight because we've got some actually really good kind of business-oriented questions, but don't panic, don't leave. Anytime I mention the word business, the audience gets smaller and people are like, I'm not interested in making money. I actually do have a topic that is the primary reason why I don't have a lot prepared for you tonight. The whole bit about having the good business questions, that's kind of my excuse because we do have some good business questions, but I do have a topic I want to talk to all of you about that's kind of a reminder. It's a little shove to say, hey, it's almost the end of November, so you really need to start thinking about this and kind of getting your butt in gear. So I promise you, I think that you will find some benefit in that. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to dive right in first with the photo quote because we're not going to skip that. All right, so this week our photo quote comes from a British street photographer named Matt Stewart. Matt is primarily a film shooter. He does use digital work for his commercial work, but most of his street photography is shot on film with a 35mm wide-angle lens on a Leica. And his quote, "Don't be reluctant to press the button. Even if the picture is not quite there, saying yes and keeping yourself awake will stop any overthinking." So just to give you a little background on Matt, he is a British street photographer who is known for his both witty and humorous images that capture moments in everyday life. He has published several books, he's exhibited his work in galleries around the world, and he is a member of the street photography collective called In Public. I do have a link to his website in the description below the video. I encourage you to spend some time there, read his bio, study his images. Now, I'll tell you why I picked this quote. And this is the first little, shall we say, push that I have for all of you tonight. The idea that you should just go ahead and take the picture. Maybe it's not perfect yet. Maybe you are very aware that it's boring. Composition's not great. You're not close enough. Lighting's not good. Your exposure's not completely dialed in. But if there's a chance that you are going to miss that moment, you should shoot. Now, for me, I was taught that way from the beginning, especially as a newspaper photographer. That's something that you learn really quick. But I've also learned over the years, through my own experience, that us photographers, as a group, I'm including myself here, because I'm going to take a shot, we are a little bit of a crazy bunch. And I want you to all to be honest with yourselves, because we're not on a Zoom call, you're not standing in front of me, so I can't hold you accountable to your answers. You can feel free to type answers in, but it's a chat window, right? Most of you, if not all of you, have had the experience that I'm about to describe more than once. Some of you have it often. You're the ones that need the most help. But here's the experience. You're out and about. You have a camera with you. Maybe it's on your shoulder. Maybe it's in a backpack on your back. Maybe it's around your neck. Maybe it's sitting on the seat in the car next to you. And you see something. And you have that photographer urge, that, ooh, I should take a picture of that. We've all had that urge. We all know that urge. It's when we see something and something triggers on our minds, get a picture. You've reached for the camera, wherever it was, but as you were reaching, maybe you got all the way to the camera and got it in your hand, but something stopped you. The camera went back to where it was, in the backpack, around the neck, on the shoulder, on the seat in the car next to you. And you made an excuse. And the excuse was any one of the following. I don't have the right lens with me. I can't really get close enough. Yeah, the lighting's not really that good. And the list goes on and on and on. And why? Think about, why did we actually make that excuse? Why did we stop ourselves? Why did we go ahead and make that excuse? We did it because we knew that since the lighting wasn't right, or we didn't have the right lens, or we couldn't get close enough, we weren't going to have an epic photograph. But if you rewind to that moment, that urge that says, ooh, I should take a picture of that. There was nothing in that urge that had anything to do with creating an epic picture. It was about seeing something interesting. It's about seeing something cool. It was about thinking, God, it'd be great to just have a record of that. Proof for a conversation, or just to remember it later, to be able to laugh over it, to admire it, whatever. And we didn't take the picture because it wouldn't be epic. So the net result is we spend thousands and thousands of dollars, big money, on all this camera gear. And then what do? We don't use it. So take a lesson from a street photographer, take a lesson from a person who started as a photojournalist, who's still to this day, even if I'm working in the studio, if I think there's an opportunity, I don't care if I'm ready or not, I'm going to shoot it. I'd rather take the chance of having it than not having it. And I will tell you that one of the ways that I got myself over that, and it's different for everybody, but for me, it was these guys, right? So even if I didn't have my real cameras with me, if I had that urge, that camera's coming out and I'm taking a picture. You may have heard me say this before because I say it routinely. Some of my most favorite images that I have taken of my two grandsons are images that, as a photographer, I would be kind of embarrassed to show. They're not great exposures. They're maybe a little bit noisy. The composition's off. The focus is soft. They were grab shots in a moment when one of those two boys was doing something incredibly unpredictable, but it was hysterical. And they are my favorite shots because of what they represent. And it sincerely does not bother me that they're not perfect. So I encourage all of you, and that's why I wanted to share Matt's quote tonight, think back to your original why as a photographer. I mean, we all evolve. Our why changes. At least mine certainly has. And I would guess that yours will as well as time goes on. The why you're in love with photography and why it's so important to you. As you grow and as you evolve, your why will change. But think back to the original why you fell in love with photography, why you got hooked on photography. And then match that up more recently with the reasons why you haven't taken the picture. Nick just mentioned epicopathy, which I talk about quite a bit. Think about it. Compare the now to your why, and you're going to realize that you lost track of your why. Just take the picture. In fact, if you want to use that potentially bad picture as an opportunity to improve, make sure after that moment, when you download your images and you're sitting in front of a computer, take the time to look at that image and ask yourself, what do I need to do to make that better? If I could go back and repeat it right now, how would I improve this picture? And maybe it is the lens that you didn't have. Maybe it would be the ability to walk across the street that you couldn't in that moment. It could be any number of things, but go through that thought process. And don't take that lightly. Really go through it. Look at the exposure. Look at the composition. Look at all of it. Would it have been better if you bent your knees and got lower? Or, for that matter, got a ladder and gotten higher? What would it have taken? That process, I promise you, is a golden learning process that will help you improve your photography. And it's especially beneficial for those of you that are super busy and can't always get out with your gear. Because believe me, you'll learn just as much as if you had the camera in your hands. I promise you. All right, moving on. In case you don't follow me on Facebook, Twitter, X, Threads, or LinkedIn, you should know about these photo quotes. Every day, Monday through Friday, I post a quote from a well-known photographer along with a link that will allow you to learn more about that photographer as well as see some of their work. So if you're not following me in those platforms, the links are in the description below the video. And I'll tell you this, you should be following me because over the next couple of weeks, I've got another new feature that's going to be coming out on a daily basis. It's probably going to start out 3 days a week. Initially, it'll be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But my goal is by January, we'll have it up to 5 days a week. And it's going to be a similar feed to the quotes, but it will be kind of a combination of a little bit of photography humor, a little bit self-deprecating towards photographers, right? We will not be doing any client bashing. That's a whole nother subject that maybe we'll talk about tonight. So a little bit of photo humor. Also some tips, some other cool stuff. So you're not going to want to miss that. So you want to make sure any one of those platforms, you'll be able to catch them. And of course the quotes are going to keep going. That will be something that I'm going to be doing for quite a while because there's a tremendous amount of them out there and great lessons to be learned. Okay? And please also remember, all of you, you're part of a growing global community of photographers in over 100 countries who tune in to watch The Last Frame every week. It would help a lot more people find out about The Last Frame if you could do me a solid, hit that thumbs up below the video. The more thumbs up, the more YouTube recommends the show to other photographers. And yes, somebody actually messaged me after I said this last week because I said, hey, even if you think I'm wasting your time, you can hit the thumbs down. It still helps me. It actually does. I will say this sincerely. I don't do this because I'm trying to suck. So if you think I'm missing the boat, then feel free, hit that thumbs down. But do me a favor, send me a message or leave a constructive comment to help me improve. I always want to get better. But yes, the way the YouTube algorithm works, it's basically engagement that they want. Whether it's positive or negative, they want engagement. So thumbs down actually help the channel just as much as a thumbs up does because it means that whatever I'm doing, it moved people to take action, and that's what they're after. Okay? All right, so let's move on. All right, so I do have a little bit of advice for you tonight, and Magic 73, thank you so much for the Coca-Cola fund. I truly appreciate it. Thank you. The reason why I did not do my normal prep this week, and I'm gonna start by blaming my son, because I've gotta push off the blame. I can't take the blame. I'm gonna start by blaming my son. My son works in the pharmaceutical industry, but he is a tech guy, right? And that's very, very helpful in the sense that I really like the tech. I'm into the tech, but he's also younger and understands things probably a little bit better than I do from time to time. So he's kind of my go-to resource. So for years, I have used a program to store my passwords. It's called 1Password. Some other ones that are really popular out there are called LastPass. Obviously, now you can also store your passwords very easily in your web browsers. Google Chrome, Safari, Firefox, they all do that. I believe even Opera does that. And I can't speak for Apple, but I can tell you, of course, I can't speak for Windows, but I can tell you for Apple, Apple has the ability to store your passwords in what they used to call keychain. The latest updates of the Apple operating system for the computers and the iOS for the phones and the iPads has taken that piece of technology a little bit further and really made it so that it does pretty much everything that 1Password does. So for, probably 10, maybe going on 12 years now, I've been paying an annual fee for 1Password. And it's performed great. I've been very, very thrilled with the program. But now the bonus is I can do everything that I've been paying for free inside my Apple products. The challenge is you need to transfer it all over, which you can literally, export everything out of 1Password and import it into Apple. But what I came to realize is that I had just shy of 3,000 passwords saved in 1Password. I am a very big believer, and I encourage all of you, do not reuse passwords. You're just begging to get bit at some point, right? I'll tell you honestly, I started out with all of this tech with the idea of, why would somebody steal something from me? What do I have that's worth it? Because if they steal something from me, they're breaking the law, right? So why would it be worth it? And that worked for a bunch of years. And fortunately, I've never been burned, but the point is, we're at a point now where people automate so much of this stuff, and they're using bots, and there's just all kind of stuff that goes on. There's really no logic behind a lot of it. So I long ago adopted the philosophy that I will never reuse a password. So obviously you can't remember all of those. In fact, most of my passwords, as long as the website permits it, are at least 26 characters. They're long. So I'm not going to remember any of those passwords, right? So realizing that I had that many, I also realized, okay, that means that I've got a lot that are probably useless at this point. Websites that no longer exist, passwords that I would have created when I signed up for a website just to test it out, to see if I wanted to pay for its service, whatever. So you kind of collect them over time, and you wind up with lots of them. Now, I will tell you, the better maintained websites that have been around that long, if you haven't been to that website like in 5 years, they've actually deactivated your account for you. And if you go and try to log in, they'll tell you that nicely, and they'll give you the opportunity to reactivate it. But the good news is, they've basically kind of taken you out of the mix. So I have spent pretty much most of the last 3 days going through all of these passwords in 1Password and the ones that I had in Apple, and just really filtering through everything and checking it out. And it's one of those projects that if you're really OCD, be careful, because once the OCD kicks in, that was my problem. It's like, you got to get it done. But I'm very stoked about getting it even more organized. And the fact that now Apple has made it so easy. Anytime I come to a website, anytime I am on my phone, if I need a password, it's just automatically there. I don't even have to go dig for it, right? So while working on this, it brought to mind some other projects that I need to be working on over the course of the next few weeks. Pretty much for most of my career, I have made it a point at the end of the year, sometime in the month of December, and this project has evolved to the point now where it literally pretty much takes up my entire month of December. But I have, even back in my newspaper days, there would come a time in the month of December where I would set aside a day and I would lay all my gear out and I would clean it and dust it out, and I would empty out my bags and get all of the, the dust and the dirt out of my bags and the pockets and the vests that I wear, and just really get everything kind of reorganized and good to go, right? Once the internet came along and we started building websites, that month of December was also a time that I would evaluate my website. Now, I'll be really honest with you, because this is what some of you are going to do. I'm not referring to the idea saying, well, I want it to look cooler, so I think I'll redesign it. The reason I said I'll be really honest with you, that's what I did at first. Almost every December, I would redesign my website, which is actually kind of ridiculous. But in my defense, this was in the early days of the internet, and the internet was still growing up. So a lot of things were changing rapidly. Now we're at a point where the internet has matured a little bit. There's no reason for me to redesign my website every year. However, I do in the month of December basically do kind of a really good walkthrough, if you will, of the website and clean things up. Even looking for old information that could maybe be updated. I do take a look at my portfolio and look at what images do I want to swap out. Images that I'm just tired of looking at, images that I have better ones, right? Because I do set myself a limit of how many images I'm going to show. So just because I'm excited about an image doesn't mean it's going to make the portfolio. I'm really making sure that I'm telling a story in that portfolio. So in terms of capabilities and styles and all that type of stuff. So I want to share with you, and we're not going to read the whole article, but I am going to give you some of the pointers. The link is in the description below the video. I am going to put the link in the chat, and I will bring it up on the screen here. This is an article that I actually posted last year this time. It was updated at the end of December, but I posted it at the end of November. The top 16 super important year-end tasks that every photographer should do. Now, I know some of you, it's kind of like when the Christmas decorations go up the day after Halloween. It's like, oh, but it's not even Thanksgiving yet. Shut up, Joe. But this is the point. This is stuff that you need to start getting on your radar, right? Get it on your to-do list. These are things that you need to start considering so that you prioritize them, and that's the key. You need to prioritize this stuff. So I'm just going to read it off the table of contents, and I'll give you a little bit of background. So one of the obvious ones I already mentioned. Every year, the end of the year, all of my gear, I give it a real thorough cleaning. And that's not just my cameras and my lenses. I'm not kidding. Camera bags, camera cases, all of that stuff gets gutted, blown out with air, wiped down, everything, right? I want everything clean, fresh, good to go. This is also a great time when you're doing this. You're going through your gear and you're really looking at it to make sure, are there any problems that I was not aware of? Any things that maybe I need to send this piece of gear off and get it checked, get it looked at, right? It's also a really good time to take a look at the menu systems in your cameras. Think about what you're shooting most of throughout this past year. Do you intend to keep shooting it in the next year? And if so, has your custom menu settings and your custom configuration on the outside of your camera, the dials and the buttons, has it been serving you well? Or should you take the time to consider making changes? And believe me, when it comes to custom stuff, don't do that on the fly while you're sitting there just doing this exercise. Make some notes and think about it and consider it. Otherwise, you're going to move stuff around, and then you're not going to remember where any of your settings are. And then it's just going to be really clumsy using your gear, and you're actually hurting yourself, not helping yourself. So it needs to be a really conscious set of decisions. And I'll own it. I learned that lesson actually with my Olympus cameras when I first got my OM1, the EM1, excuse me, Mark IIs. When I got those because of all the customizations, I thought, oh, this is great. So I read the manuals very carefully, looked at all the things that I could do and said, all right, I want the camera to do this. And then the first time I went to use it, I didn't know where anything was because I had changed so much of it. It was overwhelming. So the moral to the story is I learned, you know what? Use the camera for at least 6 months. Get to know the camera inside out and backwards, intuitively. And then make the changes kind of one at a time and get used to them so that they become part of your workflow and an extension of your thought process. You don't want to overwhelm yourself, right? So also, as I mentioned, I'm sorry, I didn't mention lighting gear. You know, we talk about clean cameras, lenses, and all that kind of stuff, and the bags, and, you know, if you have vests or jackets that you wear that you put gear in, all that stuff, gut it, clean it out, wash it even, right? Don't forget your lighting gear. Taking care of the lighting gear means, you know, wiping down your strobes. It's usually a good idea even to use like the kind of wet wipes that you use for eyeglasses, right? Wipe off flash tubes, things like that. Make sure you don't have any grease on them. It will prolong the life of them. Don't turn them on like immediately after you do that. Let them dry up because the liquid that's in these things evaporates very, very quickly, but give it a chance to evaporate, right? And hopefully you all know that flash tubes, you should never touch them with your fingers because the grease from your fingers, even right now, my fingers feel really dry. It doesn't matter. There's grease on them. If I touch a flash tube and then I go and start doing a shoot and I'm using that tube consistently, it will start to discolor the tube where the grease from the finger is, and it could even cause the tube to explode. So wipe those down, dust them off. If your lighting unit is fan cooled, make sure you get some compressed air and blow out that fan really well. Get as much dust out of that unit as possible. Your gear is going to last longer. I make it a point to wipe down all of my stands, C-stands especially, right? Wipe them down, get all the dirt, get all the grease off of them. Honestly, it's like getting new gear. That's the beauty of it. Going down the list here, check and update your firmware, right? A lot of people work with the, and I'm not saying you're wrong, a lot of people work with the philosophy that like, okay, hey, there's this new piece of firmware. It's kind of like a new camera hitting the street. I don't want to be one of the first 1,000 people to load it onto my camera just in case they did something stupid and then, you know, I've kind of bricked my camera, right? If that's your philosophy and you've overlooked any of them, now's the time. And for that matter, maybe you're not even sure if there were new firmware updates for your camera. Now's the time to check, right? And get everything updated. Double check your gear insurance. Hopefully you have gear insurance, right? If you don't have gear insurance, joining PPA is honestly one of the best ways to get gear insurance because you're going to have access to all the incredible educational opportunities that PPA has to offer, and you get $15,000 worth of gear insurance included in the membership. And the membership costs less than you could go out and buy $15,000 worth of gear insurance with it, right? So the cleaning and the maintenance also applies to all of your computer tech, right? So your computer, your hard drives, your memory cards, all that kind of stuff. Memory cards, very, very carefully. In fact, you can use these same kind of wet wipes on them. The folks at Hoodman also have a two-part process, and I should have had one here. I'm sorry. They have a two-part process that you can buy from Hoodman that's a dry cloth and a damp cloth like these. It's a really good idea to wipe down the contacts on your memory cards. Be really careful because if you're using like SD cards, the little pins that are between here, if I hold that there, let's see if I can get it to reflect. Am I going to be able to get it to reflect or not? Yeah, so the little pins, the gray or the black and vertical lines in between the gold, right? They're just bits of plastic. If you wipe too hard, you'll bend them. Now, a lot of you have already learned the lesson. You could actually break one or two off and your card will still work just fine, but you don't want to break too many off, right? Not a good plan. But taking care of your tech and maintaining your tech, that comes back to actually part of what I'm doing with the passwords right now. I also make sure that all my filing is in order at the end of the year. I want basically my computer cleaned up to the point where, as if it were new. If I was running a window machine, I would be running some utilities to make sure I'm cleaning up a lot of the system files and the logs and all that kind of stuff. Even on Mac, I do that to keep my machines running at peak performance, right? Super, super important. I mentioned file management, getting organized, getting things filed away, putting everything where it needs to go. Personal development. Personal development, honestly, take a look at the last year. Take a look at the last year and just ask yourself, what did you accomplish? And this isn't about, beating yourself up. It's simply about being honest with yourself about how much did my photography progress. And this is not a business thing. This is a personal thing, right? How did I improve as a photographer? Or how did I not improve, for that matter? Why? Did I need to put in more time? Did I not take the right steps? Did I follow the wrong idiot on YouTube? What is it, okay? And take that information and start to look out at the next 12 months. What did you plan? These are not New Year's resolutions. New Year's resolutions are useless. This is based on your why as a photographer and based on where you want to get to. What are the things that you need to be aware of and work on, right? That's what you're working on. And then the rest of what's on here is business stuff, okay? Obviously, with business, make sure your bookkeeping's wrapping up because it's the end of the year. Look at the numbers. Set your goals for the next year. Super, super important. For a lot of you, that means you're going to have to update your pricing, especially if you've been underpricing where you should be. I already mentioned this is when I do my website updates at the end of the year. And by the way, that does not mean you only update your website once a year. No. But it means we all get busy. Some of us really dread doing the website stuff. So this is a time where you say, okay, enough's enough. I've got to do it now, right? You can't keep putting it off. So something super important for you all to consider, to think about. Now, it's also worth pointing out, for those of you that are in business and are making money, some of you are listening to this, and I'm causing you a whole bunch of stress because there are a few of you, depending on your business, especially if you shoot events, who are saying, but the month of December for me is crazy busy. I'm shooting nonstop. I'm shooting Christmas parties and all kind of stuff. If that's the case, good for you, right? That means you're going to take the month of January and you're going to start the year off this way, right? Or maybe going into next year, if November is a slower month for you, take the month of November and do that so that you treat December as if it were the beginning of your work year. So it may take you a full 12-month cycle to kind of get into a groove that works for you and your business. That's okay. But these are super, super important things that you really need to do. Because, look, here's the thing. If you just keep doing what you're doing, period, two things happen. If you are an amateur, and I'm only using the amateur label in the sense of if you're not worried about making money, keep doing what you're doing. Eventually, you're going to get bored with all of it because it's the same crap over and over and over again, right? If you're doing it for money, or if your goal is to get to a point where you can make money, keep doing the same old thing. Your clients are going to get bored with you. Because the world continually evolves. And by the way, I don't mean chase trends. You know how I feel about trends. No. I'm just saying, look, the world continually evolves. It keeps going. You need to evolve too. So I am not in any way suggesting, what's the latest trend? Ooh, you need to be all over that. No. In fact, better yet, what's the latest trend? You should be going this way. You don't have to be the best. You don't have to be the greatest. You have to be you. And you has to be really good. And then it's about finding the people that appreciate what you do. So again, link is in the description below the video. The link is also in the chat for those of you that are here now. I encourage you, take a look through that article, this conversation, use it to help you kind of formulate, hey, these are the things that I really should be doing, and do it. It will make a big difference. It will help prolong the life of your gear. It gets you better for the next year. It gives you a little bit more focus on the things that you need to work on to achieve your goals. Okay. All right, so I've got two questions. One that's left over from last week from Anya, and I see Anya's here, so I want to make sure that I deal with that. And then another one that was left on a comment thread underneath one of the videos from the previous week from Michael Kramer, and I see Michael's here. So we're going to tackle both of those. In the meantime, though, any of you have questions, feel free to type away. We've got a nice chunk of time here, so I will do my best to get to all of them, okay? The two questions that we have, I can certainly eat up a lot of time with, but I am here and I'm yours, so let's solve some problems. But last week, Anya asked me the question, what are the failures not to make when you're setting up selling prints? And I commented that at the time that it's a great question. It was a great way to ask the question, right? As opposed to kind of the lazy version of, what do I need to do if I'm, going to sell prints, right? Because there's tons of information online that will, tell you, hey, if you want to sell prints, here's how you can do that, right? So, Anya, I gave this some thought through the week in terms of how I would approach that, and there's a couple things that I think need to be said. So I want to start out with, let's call it the warning. And it's not a warning where I'm trying to talk you out of it. It's a warning in the sense of, I hope, if this is something that you're considering doing, I hope you will challenge yourself with this concern first. And then we'll get into some of the minutia of the things that you want to do. So here's the challenge with selling prints. And I'll be honest with you, this is something that I've struggled with even in my career. I routinely have had people say, even with my fashion portraits, I've had people say to me, it's like, why don't you make those available as prints? They would be like amazing pieces of art. And my immediate thought when I hear that, it's like, who the hell would want a picture of somebody else with all this makeup hanging on their wall, right? But then you talk to a landscape photographer, and that landscape photographer is, well, who would want a picture of the sunset that I took hanging on their wall, right? So the challenge with selling prints, whether you're selling art or whether you're shooting events, let's say, and you're selling prints afterwards. In fact, Anya, by the way, let me know which version you're looking at doing, because I know you're here and you're listening, okay? Because I want to make sure that I lean into one more than the other, but I want to touch both. If you are looking at selling art, let's start there. The challenge that you do have, and it's about finding the balance so you don't talk yourself out of it, but also being honest with yourself about your own work. Is your work good enough? Now, what do I mean by that, right? Okay, good. Anya said she's looking at the art things. So this is what we're going to focus most on. When I say, is your work good enough, what you have to be considering is, do you have images that people are going to connect with? Really connect with. There's a couple things I mean by that. Understand, I think most of you understand this, but every now and then we all need to be reminded this. No other human being will have the same experience with your photographs as you did. You were there. You made the picture. You made all the choices. You did the post-processing. You chose the frames. You had the experience. To everyone else, it's just a picture. Now, there are photographers whose work, and I'm talking about some landscape photographers. In fact, I'm going to talk about one in particular because I mention this guy a lot. He's very well known. his work is an experience. The gentleman's name, let me switch over to the browser here, is Peter Lick. He's an Australian. I believe he's actually based either in New York or LA now, but he's from Australia. He has galleries all over the United States. In fact, I think he has them around the world. But they just opened one in New York, for those of you that are in New York. If you ever go to Las Vegas, he's got like 4 of them in Las Vegas. So we're talking some pretty heavy-duty real estate. But when you walk into one of his galleries, you see images like this one at the top here, okay? But you'll see those images like 8 feet wide when you walk in. And these images, in fact, let me see. Yeah, I mean, you could see how big these prints are, okay? So immediately when you see these images, you're experiencing them. Look at how rich and intense the colors are on his work. I mean, I'm not going to blow everything up here, but also I want to show you, I want to make sure you're noticing some of the prices. $4,600. This guy has sold images at $1 million, more than $1 million, right? But, intense colors, all that. But I also want you to notice how incredible the detail is, right? You don't see a sunset picture from Peter Lick where the sky is blown out. There is detail in every part of that sky except the very center where the sun is, right? There's incredible dynamic range. There's incredible colors, saturation. So when you see these images, you experience these images. And that's why he is able to get $4,600 for a print that's 100 centimeters or $9,900 for a print that's 280 centimeters. And believe me, this guy's work, it sells, okay? So the challenge that you've got when you begin this process is to figure out, where does your photography fit in there? This past weekend, my wife loves craft fairs. We went to a local craft fair, and almost every craft fair that I go to in the area, there is always one photographer at that craft fair that's got pictures hanging all over a little 10-foot by 10-foot booth and bins that you can go through, and the prints are in mats. And you can buy 8 by 10s and 11 by 14s, usually for less than $50, right? The reality of it is that photographer's not making any money. It's a hobby. Because at $50, even if they print the images themselves and put them in the mats themselves and then seal them and all that stuff, they're not making enough money to pay their bills. I have sat at these craft fairs when I've gone to these craft fairs with my wife and picked a chair somewhere where I could sit and watch a photographer's booth just to see how much interest they got in their work. They're not making money. They're not paying their bills. And a big part of that, Anya, is because they have overlooked one of the most important reasons why people buy art. So, Anya, I saw that you mentioned you're in Germany. I'm pretty sure you have access to Netflix in Germany. And even if you don't have access to Netflix, go to YouTube. Search for some of the documentaries about the art world and art buyers. And watch a few of them. There's a couple excellent ones on Netflix, but you'll be able to find stuff on YouTube as well. And I want you to pay close attention when they interview both the gallery owners, but also the art buyers, the people that buy art. And this is not photography, but it's art in general. And you're talking about selling images for art, right? There's something that you're going to notice when you watch these, that every one of these people, when they look at a new piece of art, or they change the conversation from this piece to this piece, they may mention a title, they will mention who made it, but then they will tell a story. That story will be about that artist. That story will be possibly about that artist making that piece of art. And they spend more time talking about that story than they do the artist, than they do the piece of art itself, than they do the price. It's the story. So this is where the real challenge comes in for photographers. Photographers, on a whole, suck at telling stories. We'll argue, well, we do that with our cameras. Yeah, but if you really want people to care about your work, you need to become a good storyteller. So I mentioned Peter Lik before. Obviously, he can't be in every one of his galleries all the time. In fact, he's hardly ever in his galleries, but he has full-time employees. And I've been to numerous of his galleries across the United States. And one of the things that I'm always very impressed by when I go into his galleries, the salespeople that are there are very attentive. You won't get more than 15 feet into that gallery before they will say hello to you. And they'll move towards you. Just towards you. They'll read your body language. They'll listen to what you have to say. And if you're not going to engage with them beyond the hi, how are you? They leave you alone. They don't bother you. If you ask them any questions about the work, doesn't matter if you're asking it from a photography perspective or just in general, they can spend an hour and tell you about how Peter Lik made that image and why he made that image and the choices that he made while making that image. He happens to use a very unique printing process, which is part of what makes his images so valuable. When you walk into a room and look at one of his prints hanging on a wall, if you walk around the room as light reflects differently off the print, the image actually changes a little bit. I don't mean like a hologram where it's two pictures, no. But the image takes on a very different kind of mood from one lighting arrangement to the next. And they even have rooms where you can go in and they can change the light levels so you can see it in the rooms. But they talk about all these cool things. And they talk about the story behind it. And what's happening is, while you're listening to the story behind how he made that picture, they're making connections. Their story is emotional. The colors in his pictures are emotional. So you're building a connection. So I bring up all this stuff first because I still haven't answered your question. Well, what failures do you need to avoid? That's the first failure. Don't think you're going to get people to spend big money for a bunch of nice pictures. When, in fact, here, I will share the web address for Peter Lik's website so you can all check it out later. When you walk into one of his galleries and you look at his images, you will say, wow. Period. So you have to ask your question. The product that you want to put forth, is it going to make people say, wow? And I don't mean your relatives or your friends. I mean, is it going to make a stranger who wanders upon it, is it going to make them say, wow? And if they do say, wow, that doesn't mean they're going to buy it, because they're not. But if they do say, wow, then you have to share a story. That story makes the connections. That story gets that person to bond with that piece of art. That story gives them something that makes that art even more special. So after they spend all that money and they take it home and they hang it on a wall in their home, when people come into their home, they are able to share that story. And then everyone who sees it has a similar response Because believe me, somebody doesn't want to spend top dollar, $10,000 for a print, and have people walk into their home and not be wowed by the whole thing, and not just by what they see, but by the story. Because as they're telling that story, here's this incredible image by this incredible photographer with this amazing story, and now people are straight up jealous of this person that they've got this work of art. So what makes Peter Licht's images, and I don't want to say different because his images are landscape. The overwhelming majority of his work is landscapes. He does do some urban imagery and things like that, but the majority of his images are landscapes. And many of his images are well-known locations that we've seen many images of before. So how is he able to demand so much money? Well, I've already told you, part of it's the stories. His photographs are technically amazing. Again, you're not going to see flaws. The images are taken at the perfect time of day, under the perfect weather, from the perfect camera angle, with amazing composition, incredible dynamic range in the images, and vibrant, emotional colors. They are printed at the highest quality, mounted, framed into these incredible display pieces. That's how you get the money. So, part of what you have to decide before you dive into this, Anya, is, are you looking to try and do volume work where you're not going to make a lot of money per sale? Or are you looking to make 5 sales a year at $10,000 a piece? Right? Obviously, if you're going to go the 5 sales a year, that means that you need to be making actual big prints because you're going to sell that piece of art. And people can custom order Licht's images, but it costs them even more, right? Or they can buy what he's already prepared, because all this stuff, of course, is also limited editions. So, you've got to decide which version are you going to do. I know photographers who sell prints at crafts fairs. I know actually one photographer that manages to sell images at about $100 in, I would say, medium quality frames, and sells enough in the course of a weekend that he's actually able to pay his bills doing that. His work is incredible. I would argue that he undersells his work and he would be better off going the other way. But the challenge is he likes talking to people. He really struggles with being able to look somebody in the eye and say, yes, this image is worth $1,000. He just can't do that. So he'll sell it for $100 and have the opportunity to talk to people and make connections, but he's not making near the money that he could be or that it's worth. The one thing that you absolutely don't want to do when we talk about failures not to make, okay, is you absolutely don't want to go the route of using a service like Fine Art America or putting your images online where people can go and say, okay, I want this image. I want to get it in a 16 by 20. I want it in a thin metal black frame. It's going to cost this much, and then it gets shipped to them. And you never actually even touch it, meaning that order is going to go directly to a lab. It's going to get printed, and the lab will actually ship it directly to the client. You never touch it. Because part of the way that you're going to increase that value is you're going to make sure that your images arrive. If you're going to ship them, you're going to make sure that they arrive with a personalized note thanking the person, okay? Better yet, if you're smart and you really want to build your business, you're going to hand deliver your work on you. And when you deliver it, you're going to make sure that you get a selfie taken with the person and that piece of work. person smiling with their new image by Anya. It's great promotional material. Okay? So, that's basically proof of concept. It's proof to other people. It's like, look, not only does this work great, look how cool it looks in this room, and look how happy the new owner is. Right? So, it all starts, and I know I haven't given you all the business answers you want, and I'm sorry, but you've got to be honest with yourself if you're looking to be able to pay your bills, especially, which you haven't told me that part yet, but you've got to be honest with yourself. Is your work there? It may make more sense for you initially to work with lower margins and cheaper art to give you the opportunity to hone your storytelling skills and hone the process of talking to people, etc. That can also buy you some time if you need to work on the overall quality of your images. So I shared the Peter Lick website with you, which I realize, and this is not my goal. For some people, they'll find it discouraging when you see those prices and you realize that people actually buy his work. A lot of it. I mean, just go look at where his galleries are and you're going to realize that the rent on those galleries alone is astronomical, not to mention that he has multiple full-time employees at every one of those galleries. So he's actually selling this stuff, okay? But look at the quality of the work. Look at how he's displaying it. And when I say look at how he's displaying it, I don't mean in a fancy, extremely expensive gallery. I mean displaying it on, huge, big, so that it makes impact, right? That's what I'm talking about, okay? So that's kind of where you start, right? Or you make it a hobby. And you get prints made, you put them in mats, and you go to craft fairs, and you make, some extra money in the weekends. In other words, kind of like a side hustle, right? Neither one is a bad plan as long as you're being honest with yourself about what you want out of it and what you need out of it. If you want to pay your bills, you need to be using Peter Lick as a model, and you need to be working towards getting your, the quality of your work up as high as you can. Because you got to remember, again, you're the only person that experienced those images. So right out of the box, that means by default, and I haven't seen your work. So the good part is I know that I'm not insulting your work because I haven't seen it, and I don't want to see it. That's exactly my point, right? I need you to understand this, that this is a generic statement. You will appreciate your work much more than most other people will. So is your work special enough that other people are going to say, oh my God, wow. But that's not where it stops. After they say that, are they willing to open up their checkbook or pull out a credit card and spend the kind of money that you need them to spend? And yes, I think somebody made a comment here. Eric made a comment about, would love to sell prints, but I question myself with the same. Who would want a floating person on their wall? One of the hardest things for photographers in general, I don't care what your genre is, I don't care what your business model is, one of the hardest things is to get yourself to the point that you can look someone in the face and say, this is what my work is worth. It's hard. It's hard to do. It's hard to do because we all fear rejection. We can talk tough about it, but the fact is we all fear rejection, right? So I'm going to pick on the lawyer because there's a lawyer here in the room tonight. It's different for a lawyer. Somebody can come into a lawyer's office and, say what's it going to cost, and the lawyer can look at them and give them an astronomical number. And I'm not saying is the lawyer worth it or not, but the lawyer can give them an astronomical number because most people, if they've got to go see a lawyer, they're desperate for the help. And it's help that they can't possibly achieve themselves. So they essentially, they have to pay it. They have to find a way to pay it, right? That's not the case with photography. We are not, creating things that people are, should we say, desperate for, okay? So we don't have the ability to just, set a price, whether that price is ridiculous or whether that price is fair. We don't have the ability to just set a price and expect that people are not going to question it, right? So, are there people making huge money selling prints? Yes, there are. Peter Lick is one of them. Are there people that are making great money doing photography other than portraits and weddings? Yes, Peter Lick is one of them. And there are many others, by the way. But he's probably one of the best known worldwide, and that's why I use him as an example, because his work is also an exemplary example of what does it take, from a quality standpoint to be able to do that. Okay? All right, so I'm at 7 o'clock. Shocker. Michael Kramer, I did not get to your question. I am not ignoring it. I left you a comment on YouTube. I would love to see the URL of your current website, and I realize maybe you don't want to post it under the comment. Send me a message either through one of the social media platforms or on my Tog Knowledge platform, wherever you can access me. Send me a message with the URL. That way I can craft the response better. I will not show your website unless you say, hey, it's okay if you show the website. But you have some really great questions and some good information you're looking for, but I want to get the whole picture before I start answering it. Otherwise, I'm liable to just go shooting off into space and not actually give you what you need. So give me that. I'll make sure that I take up your question next week. In the meantime, gang, we're out of time. Thank you for watching. I hope that you found some value with what I shared with you tonight. Of course, we'll have more stuff next week, along with, of course, the Last Frame Q&A. And remember, if you can't make the live show, you can leave questions and comments below the video. That's what Michael did, and I'll answer them the next show. If you haven't done so yet, please, thumbs up. Helps people find out about the show. And remember, you don't get back the days that you waste. So please, go pick up that camera and shoot something, because your best shot, it's your next shot. Adios, gang.